Again, I'm Don Bureau. I am the President and the CEO of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. And to everybody in this audience, and just look around, folks, we have over 1,100 people in this room today. Amazing. Our dear friends here at the Convention Center today is the largest event that they have held. So again, thank you so much for coming out today. On behalf of the entire team at the Chamber and our Board of Directors, I do welcome you here for a very exciting and special day with the Right Honourable Prime Minister Mark Carney. Some people in the audience have been teasing me because I've been on the job for 3 weeks. It's been a great 3 weeks. Folks, I want to acknowledge that we are here today in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory and land of the Mi'kmaq Nation. And we need to be reminded, I think, every day that the treaties that were signed were rooted in peace and friendship, and they were signed in a way that binds us all as treaty people with rights and responsibilities to each other. As I mentioned, I want to acknowledge and welcome His Honour, the Honourable Mike Savage, Lieutenant Governor for the province of Nova Scotia, and his wife, Her Honour, Mrs. Darlene Savage. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. We're also honoured this morning to have a number of elected officials, both at the federal and the provincial levels, and thank you also for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here this morning. Folks, events like this don't happen alone. We are very pleased to have the presenting partner today of the Insurance Bureau of Canada. They are our presenting partner. Our champion partner is Stuart McKelvey, and we have host partners Emera, Recover Initiative, Global Public Affairs, and Verican Capital. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. So as you all know, the Carney government's first federal budget allocated roughly $80 billion for defense spending over the next 5 years. And there was an amazing and significant announcement here in Halifax made yesterday. Folks, this is a substantial investment and a huge opportunity for our economy, for shipbuilding, for multi-use technology, for ocean technology, and overall security supply chains for our region. We're looking forward to new jobs, looking forward to new industries, looking forward to new innovations that will certainly transform this city and transform this province. Mark Carney. Mark Carney is Canada's 24th Prime Minister. He was elected leader of the Liberal Party of Canada and sworn in as Prime Minister in March 2025. He leads a government that will take action to unite Canadians, defend Canadian sovereignty, and build the strongest economy in the G7. It is my honor to welcome the Honourable Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. Welcome, sir. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Wow. Merci. Thank you. Thank you all. Wow. Okay. Thank you. Good night. Thank you very much. Yeah, quit. Always quit while you're ahead. No. That's a fantastic. Halifax has always had an incredibly strong place in my heart. It was reinforced at the start of last year when I first began running for the leadership, and on the first day of the leadership campaign coming here. And getting the support, getting the ideas, getting the energy, getting the resolve that the people of Halifax, people of Nova Scotia have, and the love for our country. I want to thank the Halifax Chamber of Commerce for hosting me, bringing us all together. I'm looking forward to the conversation with Seamus O'Regan, although I'm a little nervous. You know, great journalist, great politician. He knows me. This isn't a disadvantage. He's 2/3 of the sponsors, as far as I could tell when I was looking at the thing. So I'm gonna talk out the clock. I'm just going to talk out the clock because this is the Chamber of Commerce. You all have important things to do and not that much time. What I'm going to do is speak briefly as possible about the government's plan, what we're doing to build Nova Scotia strong and build Canada strong, because building this great province strong is central to our government's mandate. We're going to pick up, and in this room, across this province, across the history, the entrepreneurial spirit and drive that makes Nova Scotia special. Spirit that's built companies like Mersey Seafood, helped build out Michelin, social enterprises like Hope Blooms, global champions like Oxford Frozen Foods, Stanfield's, goes way back to my history, but pillars of the new economy, Volta, Cove, Denova, Maritime Launch. I'll say more about Maritime Launch in a moment. You know, as I said, on the first day of the federal campaign, I came here, and what I heard was concerns from Nova Scotians about how rapidly the world is changing, was changing then, still changing, and how many of our strengths based on close ties to America, and their deep ties between Nova Scotia and New England, and of course America, but those strengths based on deep ties to America were becoming our vulnerabilities because of choices the U.S. was making. It's their right, but it's our imperative to respond. And people sensed even a year ago the rupture. But what I felt was the resolve, the determination of Nova Scotians to take matters into their own hands, and as of Canadians to take care of ourselves so we can take care of each other. And our government was elected with a clear mandate, a mandate to focus on what we can control to build a stronger, more independent, more resilient country, and to build Canada that works for all. Pour bâtir un Canada fort, il faut d'abord renforcer nos propres forces. Et ça signifie devenir notre meilleur client. Cela signifie travailler ensemble, le gouvernement fédéral avec les provinces, les entreprises avec les syndicats, et établir un véritable partenariat avec les peuples autochtones. Et cela exige que nous diversifions nos relations commerciales. Now, the first job of government is to keep Canadians safe. And to that end, we're recruiting 1,000 new RCMP officers, 1,000 new Border Services officers. Led by Nova Scotia's own Sean Fraser, we have introduced 6 distinct pieces of legislation to tighten our borders, strengthen public safety, combat hate, and have the biggest tightening of bail and sentencing laws in generations. We're transforming our defense to take full responsibility for Canada's own security, to be a stronger partner to our allies, and, while we do so, I'll say more about this, to build a strong economy here at home. Over the past 10 months alone, we've committed over $60 billion into our defense and security, the single largest year-on-year increase in defense investment. We've streamlined procurement, we've cut red tape, and we've ensured that the women and men in uniform get the pay they deserve and the equipment that they need. And as a result, hopefully you've heard, yesterday NATO confirmed that Canada has achieved its 2% defense expenditure target, half a decade ahead of its original schedule. And we are just getting started. Les fondements de notre défense et de notre sécurité reposent sur les femmes et les hommes qui servent. L'une des mesures les plus importantes que nous avons prises a été d'accorder une augmentation salariale à chaque membre des forces armées canadiennes. Et maintenant, le recrutement a augmenté de 13% cette année. We have launched Canada's first defense industrial strategy. There's a lot of big numbers, but I want you to take this one away. That strategy, public money combined with private, will catalyze over $500 billion of investment over the course of the next decade in Canada. We're not sending the money to the United States. We're investing it here in Canada to grow this economy. And that's everything. That's everything from conventional ships and planes, armaments, but it's aerospace to AI, it's cyberspace to outer space, it's critical minerals and essential infrastructure. And core to that strategy, as I just alluded, core to that strategy is becoming our own best customer, buying from ourselves, building our own industries, and creating hundreds of thousands, not just of jobs, but of high-paying careers. You know that we're working with Irving to build Arctic offshore patrol and surveillance vessels, some of the 15 River-class destroyers, something started under Seamus's time, and as part of our over $50 billion national shipbuilding strategy. The start of the year, we announced that Sydney will be the preferred location for maintenance port for future icebreakers. Thank you, Mike. Mike Kellaway is personally going to oversee. Well, no, we have standards, so maybe you can just observe. This deepwater port will support the operation and maintenance of the Coast Guard's largest and most capable Arctic-ready ships. Now, let me just make one point. I'm going to go off script here. Let's put in perspective what Canada does for the Arctic. We already have the second largest icebreaker fleet in the world after Russia. Once our icebreaker program is completed, we will have the largest. We will have the largest. We will have 42 icebreakers. The Americans have one. Americans have one. We're going to help them build them, but we are taking responsibility for our defense in the Arctic, the defense of our coast. Earlier this month, on my birthday, just coincidental, but I'm just saying, it was my birthday in case any of you might have missed it, March 16th, the Minister of Natural Resources, the Minister of National Defense, Minister McGuinty, announced a $200 million agreement to lease dedicated space on the launch pad, the multi-user spaceport at Canso, Nova Scotia. And that shows our ambitions in space. And yesterday, I was at CFB Halifax again with the Minister and our caucus, Canada's largest military base, and we announced a package of defense infrastructure and property investments across Nova Scotia alone worth more than $2 billion. So we're modernizing as part of this, and this is an important point. Yes, there are ships, yes, there are planes, yes, there are armaments, yes, there's AI and others, but we're doing more, and it has broader implications, modernizing critical infrastructure, building new facilities to support the next generation of fleets, expanding training and operational capacity. This brings thousands, literally thousands of new engineering, manufacturing, and construction jobs, and again, we're just getting started. Now, more broadly, to build the economy and to help Canadians get ahead, our government has moved quickly on tax. We cut taxes on income, on housing, on capital gains, and on business investment. We put in place, and this is for the Chambers of Commerce around Canada, we have put in place a productivity superdeduction. You can guess that I don't say this in all speeches. A productivity superdeduction, which is a broad-based 100% tax write-off for everything from manufacturing assets to intelligence infrastructure to research and development, clean energy, and electric vehicles. On top of this, we've instituted investment tax credits across the clean energy value chain, from electricity to critical minerals to storage. You take all these measures together, our marginal effective tax rate for investment is just 13%. That's 4.5 percentage points below the United States. It's 1/2 of the G7 average. It's no wonder that Canada is now rated as one of the most attractive destinations for foreign direct investment, and we're the second highest per capita in the world. Now, the core of that, the core of our economic strategy is catalyzing private investment, $1 trillion of investment over the course of the next decade. in major projects, in housing, defense obviously, artificial intelligence, critical minerals, clean and conventional energies. And part of the way we're doing that is through a new major projects office, which is a single point of contact to get nation-building projects built faster, approved within 2 years. We've already referred over 120 billion worth of projects, from everything from nuclear to ports to LNG to critical minerals. And I'm going to mention one that's close to my heart because it's an illustration. I'm mentioning it because I have the microphone and it's close to my heart. But I think it's an illustration of how we're shifting. For my entire life, literally my entire life, we have talked about the Mackenzie Valley Highway. It's a project, so 61 years, because I just had my birthday, if I might have mentioned. And so we've announced that we're going to build this highway, which connects south of 60 all the way to Inuvik. It has a defense value, and it has obviously a commercial value, and it has a social value. It connects all these communities. So we didn't announce and say, yes, we're going to build it. We announced we are breaking ground starting this summer. We're going to go all the way to Mackenzie Valley because it asserts our sovereignty, it protects our communities, it builds this country, it gets things done. Now, and I say that because I want to move to something closer to home here. I'm meeting Premier Houston after this. We'll talk about many things. One of the things we will discuss is Wind West. As you know, an offshore wind project that has the potential, if fully developed, to power 1/4 of Canada's electricity needs. Okay, that's the order of magnitude. That is not a project that we intend to talk about for the next decade. It's a project we intend to move quickly to FID decision with partners or not, because this is a busy room and we got to decide on what we're going to do and where we're going to move. But it's very promising and the federal government is fully behind it. Au cours des prochaines semaines, nous mettrons... Yeah, it's good. We go. Et pendant les prochaines semaines, nous mettrons l'accent sur le renforcement de la capacité en énergie propre du Canada. Nous publierons une stratégie en matière d'électricité afin de doubler notre réseau d'ici 2050, tout en bâtissant une économie plus forte et durable. Again, closer to home, literally closer to home, we've launched Build Canada Homes to turbocharge housing construction and in the process create a new housing industry using factory technologies, cutting building timelines by 50%, reducing costs and emissions by 20%. Over 9,000 units have already been fast-tracked even before the legislation tied to create Build Canada Homes has passed the House of Commons, and that includes hundreds of homes in Shannon, in Dartmouth. Alors nous bâtissons de grandes choses avec rapidité et ambition. C'est pourquoi le monde entier souhaite faire davantage affaire avec nous. Un an après notre entrée en fonction, les investissements directs étrangers au Canada ont atteint le plus haut niveau depuis 2 décennies. So the highest foreign direct investment in Canada in 2 decades. But it's important not just what we build, but how we build. We're building inclusively, in full partnership with First Nations, Inuit and Métis. We're building in solidarity with workers, creating good union careers. We are building sustainably, and we are building Canadian by becoming our own best customer. Our Buy Canadian policy means that whenever the federal government is spending, we're selecting Canadian suppliers by default rather than previous best efforts. That includes federal infrastructure spending. Yeah. That includes federal infrastructure spending, so as much as possible, the $70 billion we're planning to invest in roads, bridges, community centres that Canadians rely on come from Canadian suppliers. So we have the right plan, and momentum is building. But we have to recognize the scale of the transformation means that some of the biggest payoffs will take time. And we know that Canadians are feeling the pressure of everyday expenses right now. And that's why, from the start, we've been focused, relentlessly focused, on making life more affordable for Canadians. On our very first day in office, I kept the promise I first made here in Halifax to cancel what had become a divisive consumer carbon tax. We then cut taxes for 22 million middle-class Canadians, saving up to $840 a year. We've cut taxes for first-time home buyers, saving them up to $50,000 on their first home. We've reduced tolls on the Confederation Bridge from $50 to $20 and cut the fares on ferries by 50% here in Atlantic Canada. A few weeks ago, we launched the Groceries and Essentials benefit, which will deliver hundreds of dollars more into the bank account of more than 12 million Canadians, 300,000 Nova Scotians. Nous pouvons contrôler comment nous nous soutenons les uns les autres durant des moments difficiles. Nous pouvons contrôler ce que nous bâtissons pour nous offrir une future meilleure. Now, last big point I want to make is that while we're diversifying, or while we're building at home, we're diversifying our trading partnerships abroad, so we no longer are overly reliant on a single partner. Our mission is to double our non-US exports, $300 billion in new trade. We've already secured 20 trade and security partnerships on 4 continents in less than a year. And that includes an agreement with China, which will unlock more than $7 billion in export markets for Canadian farmers, ranchers, lobster harvesters, and agri-food workers across this country. To test out the product, I will be in southwest Nova Scotia later today with one of our newest Liberal MPs, Chris D'Entremont, meeting the harvesters who help feed our nation and the world and who will directly benefit from this progress. We're delivering for Canadians and Atlantic Canadians, and we're just getting started. We're negotiating trade pacts with India, with ASEAN, 20% of global GDP, and Mercosur. Now, to build a strong economy, government needs to have its own house in order. So we're taking back control on immigration. We're returning immigration to sustainable levels. Over the past 12 months, our population has declined slightly after years of record-setting increases, driven by sharp reductions, 50% reductions in new temporary residents and study work permit holders. The second thing we're doing is changing how the government spends, spending less on day-to-day so Canadians can invest more. We've launched a comprehensive expenditure review which will save taxpayers a total of $60 billion over the next 5 years, all while protecting vital services that make life more affordable, that take care of each other, including child care, dental care, and pharmacare. Ce que nous avons accompli en moins d'1 an n'est que la base de notre mandat ambitieux que nous continuons de mettre en œuvre à un rythme accéléré. Le Canada voit le monde tel qu'il est, et nous sommes tout aussi déterminés à y tracer une nouvelle voie. So we've delivered over the past year, and thank you for your support. We've delivered with the speed, ambition, and focus that Nova Scotians deserve. We've started as we mean to go on, and we're going on as this great province does, as this great nation does, as a confident and ambitious and united nation. It's our country. It's our future. We control our destiny. Nous sommes met chez nous. We're building Nova Scotia strong and building Canada strong. And now I have time for one question from Seamus. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Folks, I think we'll get more than one question in, perhaps. It's my honor now to invite to the stage a great friend to Nova Scotia, the Honourable Seamus O'Regan. Mr. O'Regan knows Nova Scotia well, having attended St. FX University back in Antigonish, so yes, they're here today. Monica Foster and her team are here, so great to see them. So, of course, Mr. O'Regan was a former Member of Parliament for St. John South and Mount Pearl, a long time and very accomplished and successful cabinet minister, and now he's the strategic counsel at both Stuart McKelvey and Global Public Affairs. Would you all please give me join me in welcoming Seamus to the stage? Thank you.
Prime Minister, first of all, boy, you've got quite a crowd up here, I got to tell you. Let me begin with the announcement of yesterday, and maybe begin somewhere personal. I can tell you that as somebody who grew up in a military base in Five Wing Goose Bay, and the brother of a veteran, former lieutenant commander in the Navy, how proud I am, and how proud I know many people in this room are, that we are meeting our NATO commitments. That is a big step. It's also a big push, delivering on it. And I can tell you, as somebody who proudly sat on the Defense Procurement Cabinet Committee for 1 year, and was relieved when the Prime Minister reassigned me to a far less complicated Cabinet Committee on Reconciliation. It's a tough one. Defense procurement is tough. So tell me about that, because you have heightened expectations a great deal. There is an impatience to make sure that things happen. How do you make them happen? How do you move the monoliths?
I think first is recognizing just how tough the issue is. And during the election campaign, you have 32 days or 33 days of events. We spent an entire day on defense procurement. I made a defense procurement announcement of how we're going to restructure how we're doing defense procurement. Any questions? Any questions? Like the media were like, what? Like, there's no soundbite here. There's no point. But it's that important. So setting out the design of something which is now launched, the Defense Investment Agency, which takes the big procurement decisions and has a couple of mandates. First and foremost, which is to go quickly, get the specs, go quickly, get value for money for taxpayers, and as part of that value for money for taxpayers, ensure that we get the industrial benefits as much as possible. That's the first component. The second, it's hard to execute unless you have a strategy. We have a clear defense strategy, investment strategy, I should say, which is build, partner, buy. So we start with the preference to build here in Canada, partner with like-minded partners where there is some sharing of that, and only in the event, and there will be cases where you can't satisfy with the first two, that we have to buy from abroad. The third thing that in moving quickly was to also go to the basics. We were not paying our women and men in the armed forces what they deserve. Same for veterans, from your time there, moving forward on that. And they don't have some of the basic armaments that are necessary. So we have a big contract with the Colt Rifle, Canadian company, which illustrates the whole point. Colt supplying 65,000 rifles because the rifles we've been using are 35 years old, or not using, as the case may be. So that's some of the basics. And then the last thing I'll say, and we may get into it or not, but a big thing that's happened over the course of this year is some of those defense partnerships, particularly with Europe. So we're the only non-European country that is inside the tent for European defense procurement. So we're treated as locals for European defense procurement. That creates huge partnership opportunities in aerospace, in just a whole host of areas. And that's catalyzing a lot of, and speeding up a lot of the investment that we're going to do.
I used to keep a map in my office for those people who came in, the Newfoundland and Labrador centered map of the world. It's kind of sometimes how we are, admittedly. But it just makes the point that Atlantic Canada is not on the end of Canada, it's in the middle of the G7. I mean, it's an incredibly strategic location. Well, you know, when you have to, Halifax has a few more direct flights to Europe than St. John's does, but, you know, having to fly to Toronto to fly back, I mean, the St. John's to Dublin is shorter than St. John's to Toronto. But it's not just Europe, it's also the Arctic.
100%.
We are a gateway to the Arctic, and incredibly, we hold some pretty valuable real estate here.
We hold very valuable, so I want to pick this up, starting with the map. So I've been spending over the last month, I've been in a number of meetings, Norway, a couple of virtual meetings with Nordic leaders, the Chancellor of Germany and others, where it's the Arctic map. It's the North Pole is the center of the world. And you see how strategic, or to look at it negatively, how potentially vulnerable our Arctic is. And you see what we're doing. So yesterday, part of my day was, I was with something called the Joint Expeditionary Force, which is, you know this from your time, which is all the Nordic countries, the Baltic countries, the UK, and it's a sort of subgroup within NATO, which we're starting to participate more actively with, which is to set out, because we recognize the link between security in the Baltic, security in the North Atlantic, and security in the Arctic. Now, to fast forward in terms of what are we actually doing about it, we went from 4 months on the ground, sea and air in the Arctic when I came into office to 365 days. We have 7 network operating hubs, which are basically dual-use bases that we're setting up there. We're making those connections with these major roads that are there. We're 12 submarines that we're in the process of making a decision quickly, but in a way that's going to make the biggest impact both for security and investment here, including very potentially here in Nova Scotia. That we're building out the fleet. So there's a whole strategy that links it. And if I can say one other point, just to try to link some of the things that have been going on, when we talk about variable geometry in the world's changed. You know, alliances, some of them are less effective than other, you know, they had been previously. You can rely less on the rules-based order. It's things like our partnerships with the Nordics, with the UK, and others who are going to help us achieve Arctic security and have complementary skills in space, in naval, in AI, and others, and we can build out our strategic capacities, which translate that into spillover jobs and activity for decades here in Nova Scotia and across Canada.
You talk about making those links, and you know, there was a time when you would ask Canadians, not all that long ago, you'd ask Canadians, what are your priorities? You know, is it jobs, or the economy, or the environment, or national unity, or Indigenous, or defense? And I think that what most Canadians have realized now, it is not or. They are all interconnected. And that's never been, to me anyway, more obvious than it is right now. And I mean, as a governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England, it was your job to connect those dots. And I guess that's something that, you know, you have to do every day. Not only connect those dots on a policy level, but explain that to Canadians.
Yeah, no, that's right. And, you know, when those old jobs, I'd connect the dots and then I'd think, do I move interest rates? It's like, we have a few more levers now, fortunately. And then the other component of the dots, though.
I'm glad things were simpler then.
They're simpler. Yeah, and no, I'll give a speech. That's what I'll do. I'll give a speech. No, but now what we're doing is, yes, connecting those dots, seeing where there are trade-offs, but where there are complementarities, and then trying to work with the private sector. And I mean, so much of this is working with the provinces as well, but working with the private sector, because it's all about catalyzing, you know, setting out the clear boundaries, us taking some of the risk off, which you have to do. Defense, you have to set a strategy and stick to it, but then get the outsize investment from the private sector. And that's what we're working to get. And I think we've made a lot of progress, but the next few years will be decisive on that.
I remember the Prime Minister giving me the assignment in my last couple of years of chairing the Ministerial Working Group on Regulatory Efficiency and Clean Growth. And I thought to myself, not even Ottawa could come up with an acronym for that one. And who's going to pay attention to these conclusions about having a major projects office, a major projects list, and one project, one assessment? Well, now not only is it happening, but people are captured by it. Tell me about the developments that you've made there, and I mean, I know, but you can talk about how important that is.
Yeah, well, regulatory certainty is incredibly important. People need an answer in a realistic timeline. What we historically have done as the federal government is first not coordinate with the provinces. Secondly, made a series of decisions sequentially, effectively, as opposed to in parallel, duplicative processes, duplicative information, all the things you're familiar with. So what the Major Project Office does, and the legislation that empowers it, is to effectively require, well, not effectively, it does require all decisions to be made within 2 years. We're complementing that with a series of cooperation agreements, which we've announced with the provinces, including with Nova Scotia, which I'm going to see the Premier, and I think we can make that official today. So that means that we can rely on Nova Scotia for a series of things. We don't need to duplicate it, and we speed it up. So that's at the heart of what we're doing. What we're also doing, and Shannon's here, has helped lead this through caucus, is you think about and you did so much work on this on the environmental side. So we have some belt and suspenders rules that cause tension and just basically prevent action. So we had, for example, for EVs, we had both a mandate for the companies themselves and tailpipe emission standards in effect. Well, it's the latter that makes the difference to the emission and the competitiveness. And we've worked out a way with the auto industry that actually supercharges the transition but simplifies the regulation. And it's just a series of things that we need to deliberately work through on that front.
Because there is so many opportunities here in Nova Scotia and in Atlantic Canada generally for all sorts of energy projects. And some of it, particularly when we're talking about the grid, I mean, this isn't terribly sexy stuff, but it is tremendously important to nation building. Building up, getting utilities and getting provinces to work together and knock down those barriers so that we can build.
Yeah, 100%. So literally in the next week, next 10 days, I think it's next week, we will put out our electricity strategy, federal electricity strategy. Now, energy is principally a provincial responsibility, as you know, but it's when it gets linked up that we can potentially play a role, and we can also catalyze things to move more rapidly. Nova Scotia has energy potential that far will outstrip, a century worth of growth in this province, no question. I gave the example of Wind West. There's also offshore gas as well. There's lots of opportunity. So the way we make that happen, yes, bring new industry here, data centers and that type of work. Yes, make bills cheaper. Well, actually, first make bills cheaper for Nova Scotians. Bring new industries here, the transition, other aspects. But export into the rest of Canada first, export to the United States. But in order to do that effectively, you know this, we need better interties with Quebec, with other parts of Canada, and it can be much more efficient. Well, it's not that hard. It's not that sexy, I agree, but it is kind of sexy to me, but it's not that hard. I was a central banker. I mean, it doesn't make, right? So, but it takes a coordinating role. It takes ambition, coordination, and yes, sometimes it takes some money, and the federal government can help play that role with the provinces. And I will say this is one of the things, and it's a response to the energy in this room, the energy across this province and across this country, and the desire of Canadians to get things done, to come together, find solutions. And I think what's incumbent on those of us in these offices is to have the ambition that matches that way. And so having cooperative federalism, sitting down with Alberta, sitting down with British Columbia, sitting down with Nova Scotia, and sitting down all together and finding these solutions, that's what we have to do. Last point, there are massive issues right now, opportunities in Atlantic Canada. in Newfoundland, Newfoundland, Quebec, Newfoundland offshore, Nova Scotia here. We're looking to play a role, and we are playing a role, I think, to help make those happen in a way that benefits everybody.
You know, Muskrat Falls, which is something that preoccupied my time in my 10 years as a member of Parliament, huge issue. As many of you in this room know, I mean, a $14 billion hydro project that ostensibly would be built on the backs of ratepayers, and the affordability questions there were massive. And that is, I guess, something that not just in the energy space, but you know, in your thoughts about the Canadian economy, is balancing growth with affordability. One is quite long-term in its scope. The other one is short-term. It's how Canadians are living check by check, month by month, mortgage payment, rent payment by payment.
Yeah. Affordability, progress on affordability gives us the right to make progress on growth. I mean, so that's why we started with the tax cuts. That's why we layered in the essentials benefit. That's why, look, we made some tough decisions to cut expenditure in the federal government. It needed to, candidly, given it had been growing at 8% a year for a decade. But we had to cut some things. But we cut so that we preserve childcare, pharmacare, dental care, national school food program, which we made permanent, because those go to the heart of affordability, in my judgment of many Canadians, the heart of what it is to be Canadian, to take care of each other, take care of the more vulnerable. So we have to do that. Then there's a broader set of issues, which is, and I'll use your example on the electricity side. That is a massive benefit.
Want more AI power in your Git workflow? You got it. Check this out. AI conflict resolution. Resolve tricky.
Which generation should pay for it? And you only have the current generation pay for it. If you load it all up on the ratepayer today, the current generation is paying for something at a time of affordability, but it's also an intergenerational fairness thing as well. And again, it's part of the role of government to figure out how to smooth that as effectively as possible. And that's one of the issues we're putting on the table with the electricity strategy, is how do we best do that? Last point I'll make, I think that last one was my last point, but I'm going to make one last point, which is another way of looking at this, though, is we are going to create enormous value through these major projects, through the defense. And how do we ensure that as many Canadians as possible benefit from them? How can they, not just through a stronger economy, but how can they benefit more broadly? And that's something that's top of mind for us. We'll come back on that.
I wanted to ask you about something that preoccupies every Prime Minister, and probably most pointedly it will with you this year, and that is national unity. Potentially 2 referenda coming up this year, or at least there could be one in Alberta, and there could be at least an election provincially in Quebec. Tell me about how that preoccupies you and what you think you can do about it.
Well, I think
because it certainly has an effect on investor certainty. It has an effect on investor stability. I was out in Calgary a few weeks ago, and that was something that I heard from people.
It can have an effect, and these sort of structural. Well, yes, this is a short answer. What do we do about it? We do our job. I mean, I think the first thing is we do our job, which is we respect where federal responsibilities are. We work with the provinces cooperatively. We find areas, we have ambition around what we're working on. Like, you don't try to avoid controversy. You want to go straight to the heart of the issues. So, and you know this, and I'll take the example of Alberta, where there is, there's real issues in terms of developing their energy potential in a fair way for Alberta, for Indigenous peoples, for, in the case of if something were related to British Columbia, for British Columbia, develop in a way that's consistent with the energy transition, right? And I'll say one thing. So we are doing, we've approved and accelerated some big LNG projects in Canada. More will come. The LNG projects that are moving forward are top quartile or top decile, and in some cases net zero LNG. When I say top quartile decile, I mean in terms of emissions. So they're amongst the lowest emission. We're looking to move towards low emission oil with Alberta through pathways and others. So we're embedding that element because it's the right thing to do, but it's also the long-term commercial thing to do because the world wants low cost, low risk right now. Everyone's thinking about risk, low risk, low cost, low carbon energy sources, whether they're conventional or clean. So our strategy with Alberta has been to go right to the heart of the issue, which is the pipeline. But what else comes with the pipeline? Pathways, a carbon market that works in Alberta because of structural issues, nuclear power, which they're also looking to build out. So having everything on the table, rolling up your sleeves, working on it, that's the way to address it, showing that the Federation works. And it has the benefit of, it has a huge immediate payoff if we get it right. And we're making good progress with Alberta. There's more to be done, but we're making very good progress.
Prime Minister, my Atlantic Canadian caucus colleagues are sick of hearing me say this, but I would always say we can't afford ideology out our way. You deal with the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. And on that note, I think it's fair to say, and I'm speaking for a lot of people, I think in this crowd, you are definitely one of us, somebody with great ambition and pragmatism and practicality. It is a great honor to have you here in Halifax for as long as we have. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
All right, there you are. Hope you'll leave your comments and whatnot. I'm just checking my audio here. Turning up my mic a little bit because I don't know how well you can all hear this. All right. I hope you'll give us a like, follow, and subscribe. Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll be back in a bit. Bye-bye.